One of the most interesting stories that came out this week was a report from the Bank of International Settlements on Thursday that a rising number of central banks are likely to issue their own digital currencies in the next few years. So the amount of increase in central banks and big government looking at testing, whether it's the crypto yuan, the crypto euro, and many other government cryptocurrencies, is only increasing from last year and the year before. And I'm sure that this was discussed extensively at the World Economic Forum in Davos. In fact, Zero Hedge had a story out from Cointelegraph yesterday called World Economic Forum Debuts Framework for Central Bank Digital Currency, authored by Adrian Zmudzinski, Zmudzinski. The World Economic Forum, together with some of the world's major central banks, has created a central bank digital currency policymaker toolkit. Wow, how nice of them. To help accelerate the cashless society, to track and tax every single transaction, and to penalize anyone who criticizes any of these governments or central banks. According to an announcement on January 22nd, the toolkit is the more like the global enslavement, the track and tax every transaction kit, is the WEF, World Economic Forum's attempt to help policymakers understand whether deploying a central bank digital currency, CBDC, they're abbreviating a lot, would be advantageous and guide them through its design. Reason number one, tax revenues. Reason number two, control of the population. Almost, you have all the information, the spending, the credit card transactions that they would move onto a blockchain would be in a centralized database, and they could get flagged easier. And then integrating, and this is why China is the lab where everything is being tested. You integrate this with the social credit score, and that's getting worse in China after January 1st, 2020. The social credit score in China is even more nefarious and ramping up. So you integrate cashless society, and in China, cashless society was voluntary, but that's not good enough for the Chinese government. Now the Chinese government wants crypto yuan, and I have articles that are showing that with press releases that the Chinese government things are progressing. I think they're just about done with the final coding for the crypto yuan, and it could go live. There's been rumors that it could be tested in a couple cities. Now that we have the stuff with the coronavirus and all the cities on lockdown, that may be delayed. But prior to that news, there were rumors out in the last month that 2 major cities in mainland China were going to start testing crypto yuan within a month or two. So back to the article, WEF, World Economic Forum, collaborated with regulators, central bank researchers, international organizations, and experts from over 40 institutions to develop the framework. The head of blockchain and distributed ledger technology at the World Economic Forum, Sheila Warren, explained, given the critical roles central banks play in the global economy, they should not play any role at all, but unfortunately they have too much power, especially manipulating asset prices higher in an over-leveraged, over-derivative global economy. I added those parts. Any central bank digital currency implementation, including potentially with blockchain technology, will have a profound impact domestically and internationally. It is imperative that central banks proceed cautiously with a rigorous analysis of the opportunities and challenges posed. Bank of Thailand governor said that I'm not going to try to pronounce that name, that's going to be a total screw up there, said that the institution made good progress on its own central bank digital currency implementation called Project Inthanon. Recently, reports started circulating that Hong Kong and Thailand central banks have stepped closer to implementing a joint central bank digital currency. Wow, Hong Kong and Thailand together? Interesting, for cross-border payments. He explained, so it's only for cross-border payments. So they're trying to settle maybe outside the dollar. That would be trying to settle outside the dollar. That's interesting. He explained how the toolkit is useful for the continued development of the bank's digital currency. From our experience, we need to identify trade-offs between benefits from the use cases and blah, 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 associated risks across different dimensions. This is where the policymaker toolkit, pros and cons of digital currency. If you want to read more of the article, it'll be in the information description section. Let me just talk about the survey here from Tom Wilson in the Reuters article. We'll switch articles, the one that you can see on your screen there. So this was a Bank of International Settlements report that surveyed central bankers. 20% of central bankers say it's likely to issue their own digital currencies in the next 6 years. 8 out of 10 central banks of the largest central banks on planet Earth are already looking at their own cryptocurrency. Central banks in emerging markets are already very advanced in their own cryptocurrency. That's interesting. And the Bank of England, Bank of Japan, European Central Bank, and others have teamed up to examine the technology. So a rising number of central banks are likely to issue their own digital currencies in the next few years. Research by the Bank for International Settlements, or BIS, showed on Thursday as interest in the technology heats up. Some 20% of 66 central banks surveyed by the BIS said they were likely to issue a digital currency within the next 6 years, up from around 10% a year earlier. So we have on the surveys, we have only 12 months later, it has doubled. The amount of central bankers who are likely to issue a digital currency within the next 6 years, it has doubled on the survey in the last 12 months. 1 in 10 said that they were likely to do so within the next 3 years. Sounds like emerging markets are planning that faster, because a lot of people use mobile payments. Like in Kenya, they have M-Pesa and elsewhere. So that might be easier to try to force people to a government cryptocurrency if they're going to pay on their phone already. Because there's kind of already a voluntary cashless society in China and some emerging markets where people are paying with QR codes. So that's more of a voluntary cashless society. I'm talking about more totalitarian government, more Big Brother, integrating this with a social credit score and other nefarious things so people have less freedom, less control. And if government decides that they want to tax you more, well, they can literally just increase a VAT tax, a value-added tax on every transaction with a government cryptocurrency very, very quickly. Compared to without, by the way, if you're in a democratic style government, without Congress approving that. That could just be done very, very quickly without congressional approval too. Not that Congress does anything right these days. They can't even pass a budget. Welcome to Dystopia. Oh, by the way, I wanted to bring this up. So if you have not seen the documentary from Aaron Russo, Freedom to Fascism, go and watch that documentary. It's free on YouTube. I think it's almost 20 years old now. And he was talking about, people being chipped and the economic and political elites, the hypocritical Davos crowd, the champagne socialists, Davos crowd, that they wanted more control over people. And you see now with the news stories with Amazon, that Amazon's looking at people paying with swiping their hand, and then all these government cryptocurrencies. And as someone that wants people to have choice of how they pay for things, this is just, we're going in the entirely wrong direction. There's a bear market in freedom. There's a bear market in choice coming. Things are not looking good, especially in the next 6 years. Okay, back to the article. In all, 80% of central banks said they were looking at the technology, so government cryptocurrency, government blockchains, up from 7 in 10 surveyed last year. So overall, it's a very high amount of central banks looking and probably playing around with the lab, maybe paying some of these entrepreneurs who are actually good at coding, probably paying them pretty big bucks to help them out. As Facebook's efforts to launch its Libra cryptocurrency pour fuel onto debates over who will control money in the future, major countries have stepped up the pace at which they're looking at central bank digital currencies. This is bullshit spin. That is not the real reason. The real reason is these governments all realize that they're running out of ability to create near unlimited amounts of fiat currency and credit without the pitchforks and torches, without stagflate, more people waking up from stagflate and tax and lie, as asset prices don't fall where they soar, and the wealth disparity increases, and people's standard of living, if they don't own said asset prices and they're not getting their income increasing, their standard of living is falling a lot because of stagflate and tax and lie. And government getting more control over government cryptocurrency also means that people who are getting paid off the books in cash, those days are going to be very, very difficult now if government starts to fully ban cash. If all these governments start to fully ban cash and roll out these government cryptocurrencies, because then you're not going to be able to get paid off the books and not pay taxes. And there's some estimates out there from some of these technocrats in Brussels, the European Union, where about 40% of Europe's economy is underground. They call it the black market, that it's not the cash in the European Union economy is not put into banks. So that is a big target for European politicians, the European Central Bank, to go after for taxes. Again, almost everything government does, almost every time, for financial reasons, the number one reason is taxes. Now, obviously, governments like war, especially the U.S. government, but it's almost always reason number one is about taxes and control. Now, these XRP Ripple guys, if governments are going to government cryptocurrency, why do they need XRP and Ripple? If governments are, if you have China going to crypto yuan and you have Europe testing crypto euro now too, they're at least a couple years behind China in crypto yuan. Why do they need Ripple? Why do they need XRP? They don't. Not if they're skipping out the middleman. They're going right to their own government cryptocurrency. The Hong Kong Central Bank and the Bank of Thailand just said they're working on their own government cryptocurrency for cross-border payments. That would mean that XRP and Ripple are not needed, dude. Silver Junkie says cryptos are garbage. And you could think that, but then the government can force you to use government crypto. Even if you hate cryptocurrencies, depending upon which country you live in, Silver Junkie, even if you have millions of dollars in Bitcoin profits, the government can force you into crypto dollar or crypto euro or crypto yuan or crypto Australian dollar or crypto Canadian dollar or crypto yen. They can force you into these things. They can make you a criminal ex post facto. This is more Orwellian than George Orwell could have ever imagined. You take a government cryptocurrency that is forced, cash is banned, and then you integrate it with social credit score, and you have a Black Mirror episode. I don't think George Orwell could have even come up with this in his wildest dreams. Kyle says, I hate the central bank so much. I agree, Kyle. It's big government and the central banks working together hand in hand. The central banks are making sure these governments get their funding. Again, it's all about control and all about tax revenues. That's the real estate scam. Thank you that the U.S. government is running, that George Gammon highlighted in his recent videos and gave me credit for, allowed my YouTube channel to get over 30,000. So thank you very much. Shout out to George Gammon if he's listening. Should probably have him on for an interview soon. He's covering this repo on the U.S. side extensively. Unfortunately, YouTube and Google are killing me. My sister, who's a social media professional, searched my company name in a Google search, Wall Street for Main Street, and took a screenshot of it. And the censorship for Google is so bad that my YouTube channel is now the 4th ranked thing that shows up, even though I get over 100,000 views per month on my YouTube channel. And my website, which gets almost no traffic, my wallstreetformainstreet.com website, which gets almost no traffic, is coming up. 2 links of that are coming up ahead of that, along with my Wall Street for Main Street Twitter, which I don't even tweet on. So there's 3 things that are coming up ahead of my YouTube channel in Google search that I don't even use, that get no traffic whatsoever, ahead of my YouTube channel, which means that Google and YouTube are actively censoring so that my YouTube channel does not come up in Google search and does not come up in YouTube search. Which means that eventually a lot more money is going to come out of my pocket for content. Well, money has already come out of my pocket. I was cashing $2,000 a month checks from Google AdWords revenues about 4 or 5 months ago, and those are gone. But thankfully, I have my Patreon. So thank you very much to my loyal PayPal and Patreon contributors. Christopher Wall says, so I guess world slavery is the endgame. It is increased amounts of serfdom. This free speech will be over. Once they go government crypto and social credit score, all dissent will basically be gone. If you speak out, you risk your bank accounts and credit cards being fully shut down. If you have millions of dollars, I've been repeating this now for a week or two. If you have millions of dollars in Bitcoin or Ethereum profits or other cryptocurrency profits and you haven't sold out of those, at any point, depending upon which country you live in, depending upon what your citizenship is, At any point, those governments, ex post facto, can change the rules on you and make you a criminal for having millions of dollars in those profits. They could call you money launderer. They could say that you're not paying taxes properly. So if this is not financial advice, just my opinion, if I had millions of dollars in Bitcoin profits or Ethereum profits or Litecoin profits or one of those other cryptocurrencies, I would have 2 or 3 passports. Because if governments are really going down this route of government cryptocurrencies, anyone owning massive amounts of those private cryptocurrencies who is not friends with people in those large governments is going to have a target on their back. Eric says XRP will be needed for settling cross-border payments even with central bank digital currencies. That's not what these central banks are saying. But okay, you can believe that. Now, I realize they can't shut off the cryptocurrencies, but governments can make you they can label you an evil tax dodger or a criminal ex post facto. This is what governments do. So if I had millions of dollars in cryptocurrency profits, I would have 2 or 3 passports. That would be, and then I would talk to Mark Nessman. If you're an American, I would talk to Mark Nessman about legally setting up offshore bank accounts, about legally setting up multiple citizenships and things like that. The Nessman Group is very highly rated for handling American citizens and helping them. Squarecracker, also a lot of XRP Ripple people are paid. They're paid to post. It's just like a lot of the Tesla people. And a lot of the Chinese government people, too. Coronavirus may be... What's going on in China now with the coronavirus may be delaying the rollout of crypto yuan because it was supposed to start happening soon. So that may be delayed at least a couple months. Cash could be spreading the virus. But in Michael John Scott says cash could be spreading the virus in China, but Michael John Scott, cash in mainland China is hardly used. A lot of people do not use yuan to pay. Printed yuan. They use QR codes on their smartphone, and it's taken out of their WeChat Pay or Alipay accounts. So China is already, many major cities in China are already voluntarily on a cashless society. Now governments for more control can go to a government-enforced cashless society. This is where things are going. If central banks are increasingly more likely to issue government cryptocurrencies, this is where we're going. I don't like it. I hate it. I hate central banks. But I have to look at what they're planning to do anyway. We have to plan accordingly. This is moving the goalpost. This is cheating. It's not fair. Terrence says, everyone in China uses Alipay or WeChat Pay. Yes. But that is a voluntary cashless society with QR codes. The government can also force people into a government-enforced cashless society, not a voluntary cashless society with QR codes. People doing voluntary transactions, that's what a free market is all about. Let currencies compete. That's the Austrian School of Economics, the Karl Menger, the Ron Paul way of doing things. A3 Sky Warrior says there will be centralized versus decentralized crypto battle unless governments ban decentralized ones. So I don't think, in my opinion, that governments can ban cryptocurrencies because they can't shut down the internet. But I think that they can either tax them more with windfall profits taxes, or they can say that people are required to, if they maintain their citizenship in that country, that they have to sell some and pay taxes on it. So governments can, and they do this all the time, there's countless examples of this, where ex post facto, the government changes the rules, and all of a sudden, here comes your big tax bill. So you've gotten a warning from me. I don't know if you're getting a warning anywhere else about this. If you have millions of dollars in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, or Bitcoin Cash, or some of those other cryptos, getting a warning from me that you better be paying attention to the politicians and regulators in your country. Because here in the United States, just because the heads or former head of the CFTC and the SEC own Bitcoin and they've admitted it in public on interviews, just because they admitted they own Bitcoin now does not mean that other people in the years to come will not get windfall profits taxes on them, and those government bureaucrats will not get tax exemptions. Because guess what? People aren't aware of this. Most IRS employees, and I've seen interviews from them, and Project Veritas has it on video from IRS employees bragging about this, but also because I've lived in the DC metro area now for 20 years, and I've been at bars and met IRS agents. My sister had a drunk IRS agent hitting on her for a while, bragging that he doesn't pay taxes. So the rules that apply to ordinary citizens like you and me and the people listening to this podcast, a lot of these government bureaucrats are above the law. So the rules that would apply to us will not necessarily apply to them. So if there is a windfall profits tax implemented on some of these cryptocurrencies ex post facto, these government bureaucrats that own these things may be exempt. And look at China. So a lot of these Chinese government officials were using Bitcoin and Ethereum to get their savings out of the country. But cryptocurrency ownership in China is shunned. It's banned. And they're kicking out tons of their Bitcoin miners. They're using the electricity excuse that Bitcoin miners use too much electricity in mainland China to mine the Bitcoin, but really they want them gone. Douglas, we are talking more about government crypto, and government crypto is about tracking and taxing every transaction. It is about more control over the economy, and then it is about eliminating free speech. It is about eliminating dissent. Like how on my live stream a couple days ago, well, yesterday actually, when I was talking about Boeing, and then all of a sudden the stream got cut off. That was weird. Samajis asks, Jason, how do people enter Congress without 2 pennies to rub together and leave as millionaires? Of course, the game is fixed. Yep, Republican and Democrat. People are told that as long as they don't try to change the system too much, if they shut up and they get on the right subcommittee or committee, they can make millions of dollars. Then you also have 4 major governments that are spending unbelievable amounts of money lobbying and influence peddling here in the DC metro area. You have China, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Mike Cernovich has an excellent documentary out about Qatar. The Brookings Institute, China, and Kyle Bass has talked about this, and Emma Mollman has talked about this a lot. Chinese government and Qatar fund the Brookings Institute. Terrence asks, who is going to buy government cryptocurrency when there are stablecoins there unless they ban stablecoins? Hello, Terrence. No one would voluntarily use government crypto. It would be forced, just like legal tender laws. Very similar principle. Yasser asks, what is the documentary name for the Mike Cernovich one? So I already mentioned the Aaron Rousseau documentary, which is about almost 20 years old, Freedom to Fascism. I recommend watching that one. I'll try to put that at the end of the show. And then the Mike Cernovich documentary offhand, let me just search that real quick. I'll see if I can run a search. Okay, you're going to hear me typing, so I apologize. Okay, coming up right now. Okay, Mike Cernovich's new film, Blood Money, covers how Qatar covertly funds American media outlets, think tanks, and lobbyists to advance its agenda counter to American interests. Days after Blood Money's Hollywood premiere, a BuzzFeed writer wrote a hit piece on Cernovich. So the documentary is Blood Money. No, look, no one is voluntarily wanting to go use a government cryptocurrency. Now, there will probably be marketing efforts to try to trick people, but the free market is not going to voluntarily use a government cryptocurrency. It is going to be forced on people, just like legal tender laws. I mean, legal tender laws have been in effect now so long, most people don't even know what they are. And then you have Gresham's Law, which is where the bad money will chase out the good. So people will continue to hoard gold, silver, maybe some Bitcoin, and then pay with government crypto. Oh, looks like I pissed off some China trolls again. Bye-bye. You're on timeout, bro. Saudi Arabia is also financing Twitter. He got a timeout. Look, the government, especially large, powerful governments like the U.S. and China and the European Union, they can change the rules easily. And the rule changes almost never benefit the regular people like me and the people listening to this podcast. Blake, I'm not talking about mining stocks today. We're going to stay on topic here. Mickey, are you talking about the nickel mining company, Norilsk Nickel? I'm not sure what else you're talking about. Mark asks, why on earth are we allowing the central bankers to take away our cash option in the first place? That's a question we need to answer. Well, Mark, most people don't even know who Ben Bernanke is, don't know who Janet Yellen is, don't know who Jerome Powell is. Most Americans don't know what the Federal Reserve is, don't know what the Federal Reserve does. If I went on the street to the Washington, D.C. metro area and I walked around with a film crew and I interviewed, let's say over a week, and I interviewed 1,000 people or more that literally walked right by the Federal Reserve, I guarantee you a very low percentage of those people that walked right by the Federal Reserve would have no clue what the Federal Reserve does. A3 Skywarrior says, most Americans have never heard of Bitcoin. I would say most Americans know what Bitcoin is compared to what the Federal Reserve is. Actually, here in the U.S., a lot of people are very pro-technology, very tech-biased. They think that technology can solve a lot of problems, and Bitcoin has gotten a lot of coverage. So actually, a lot of Americans do know what Bitcoin is now, and very little Americans know what the Federal Reserve is. How is my friend in Wuhan? For now, he's okay. He anticipated some type of crisis a couple weeks ago, and he had food stored. I don't think he anticipated, I guess he always had some food stored for whatever purposes for insurance. I guess he was somewhat of a prepper. So he didn't know anything about what was going to happen. I think he was just prepping. So for now, he's okay. But it's basically like Resident Evil, except for the zombies. But it's kind of like a ghost town, and people can't really get at people. It's on lockdown. It's a mess. It's crazy. I got cut off. You may have to, Adrian, you may have to listen on the chat replay. I don't know where I was cut off. But it seems I'm getting a number of these messages now. Yasser asks, isn't crypto good since it will increase transparency with blockchain recording all transactions? Well, Yasser, it depends. So if you're pro-freedom, small government libertarian, or you're an anarcho-capitalist and you don't want any government at all, you would say that the government has no business looking at all the different things you're buying at the grocery store, at the store, online, that it's none of their business. So it really depends what point of view you have. If you like the status quo, if you're getting rich off the status quo, you might not care. But if you're a libertarian and you want limited government or small government or no government at all, you're not going to want government looking at all your different transactions. Okay, I got cut off where most people don't know who Janet Yellen is. Okay, so I said most people don't know who Ben Bernanke is, who Janet Yellen is, who Jerome Powell is. They don't know what the Federal Reserve is, what it does. But with the marketing, and the U.S. is pro-tech. There's a big pro-technology bias here in the U.S. now. People think that tech can solve all these problems in society. So that's why Bitcoin and other technologies get the benefit of the doubt. That's why Tesla is trading at, one of the reasons why Tesla is trading at such high stock valuations, because people view Tesla as a technology company, not a failed car manufacturer. Okay, well, that's it for tonight's stream. I want to thank everyone for listening. All the articles I discuss will be in the information and description section. And thank you again to my around 250 total Patreon and PayPal account subscribers. It's allowing me to focus on unique content, research, information, education, and financial analysis like this that you won't find pretty much everywhere else. You might find it later on other channels, but normally I'm first on a lot of these things. Welcome to Dystopia, though. You know, I wish I could tell you a lot happier things, that there was going to be more freedom. Free speech wasn't whatever's left of free speech here in the U.S. wasn't at risk. That governments weren't planning on going after every single transaction and tax it more. But, you know, unfortunately, that is the direction it looks like everything is going, where governments want a piece of every single economic transaction to tax more with a value-added tax. And then if you're a rabble-rouser like me and you criticize all these different governments, I criticize all the governments, and you criticize all these different central banks, then you have a target on your back. You're risking being demonetized, you're risking being censored, you're risking your bank accounts being shut down and your credit cards being shut down. And that's, I wish I was wrong, but that's the direction it looks like society is headed. Now, China's ahead because they already have their social credit score instigated, and they're ramping that up to even more nefarious ways, even more control and power over their people. And the Davos crowd, the champagne socialists, the enormous hypocrites, want to copy China. They want to move that model and use private sector big tech, and they want to move that to Western societies. And it looks like, according to this Bank of International Settlements report, that could happen in the next 6 years. Christopher says, thanks for bringing the truth out. You're welcome. I wish I had better news. But now that we know what the truth is looking like, or at least in probabilities like things are going to be, you should prepare accordingly. If I had, this is not financial advice, just my opinion, if I had millions of dollars in Bitcoin and Ethereum and Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash, I would have 2 or 3 passports. I would have one of these expert tax attorneys like Mark Nessman of the Nessman Group or others, help me prepare for crazy things that could be happening in the future, with governments going after me because I own a lot of gold or silver, or I own a lot of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. It's not fair, it's not right, but this is the new normal. This is the Orwellian worse than Orwellian dystopian society, and how things are going to get worse before they get better. Oh, and then you got Bernie Sanders supporters harassing me on Twitter, telling me that Bernie would not ban gold or silver, and that Bernie is for sound money. And that Bernie would be in favor of entrepreneurs. Oh my god, that was probably the funniest troll today. This guy had on his Twitter handle that he's in favor of gold, silver, and sound money, but was telling me how great Bernie Sanders is and how Bernie will fix the economy. Meanwhile, there's Project Veritas videos that have just been released that Bernie Sanders is hiring Antifa people. They're indirectly supporting Antifa. And then Bernie Sanders is hiring the most radical anarcho-communists, violent people who want to either silence, eliminate free speech, or hurt with violence anyone who criticizes them, like people like me. The level of hypocrisy in the West is stunning. I mean, all these government elites and central bankers are enormously hypocritical. You have people inside these central banks making six figures who cannot be fired, who are not held accountable for their bad predictions and bad economic models and bad economic policy decisions. So you have them Peter Principling their way up the government bureaucrat ladder there in these central banks. These central banks are a nefarious mix of public and private sector. They are on their security clearance levels. There's government pay scales. It's a disaster. Yeah, look up anarcho-communist. It's like jumbo shrimp. It's an oxymoron. And anarcho-communist is an oxymoron in my opinion. If Bernie wins in 2020, we might avoid AOC in 2024. I don't know, man. I know AOC's being groomed for a run as soon as she's legally allowed to run. She's not 35 yet, so she can't run in 2020. PDX says Bernie will fix like Lenin fixed the Russian monarchy. Yeah, and Lenin fixed the Russian economy, and Lenin signed, 10,000 death orders in his first week in power? Lenin signed, if you're not familiar, I believe Lenin signed 10,000 execution orders in his first week in power. Okay, well, that's it for now. But unfortunately, I wish I could bring better news. But it looks like central banks are headed along this government cryptocurrency forced cashless society path. And everyone should prepare and plan accordingly. And the rules are going to keep changing. So if you think the rules are one thing, 6 months or a year from now, they could be totally different in a very short amount of time. It's not fair, it's not right, but it is what it is, and this is the new normal, unfortunately. And again, as I end here, welcome to Dystopia.